Hello, church. It's so good to be back with you. I hope your new year is off to a good start, and I hope that you are 6 days in and still following Jesus and not chasing after something else, right? So, as you may remember, when we left off with Titus, Jen had just shared about an older generation, advice to an older generation. And it was really kind of sweet and adorable how she approached it in the sense that she felt funny as a younger person giving advice to an older generation. But the truth of the matter is that in the Christian world, we both are giving advice to younger, we're giving advice to older, we're modeling, and I'll say more about that in a minute. So let's pick it up where we left off. It's in chapter 2. We're going to pick it up in verse 4. We're going to shift from advice to older to now some counsel for the younger. It says this, then they can urge younger women, this meaning the older women, to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled and pure, to be busy at home, to be kind, and to be subject to their husbands, so that no one will malign the word of God. Similarly, encourage the young men to be self-controlled in everything. Set an example in everything. Set an example by doing what is good in your teaching. Show integrity, seriousness, and soundness of speech that cannot be condemned, so that those who oppose you may be ashamed because they have nothing bad to say about us. And this is really the problem in modern Christianity, is that we are not living in such a way that nobody would have anything bad to say about us. They have plenty to say that is bad about us because of the way that we look more like culture and less like the church. I hope that makes sense. So here's what's happening. I need to say this, and I'll say this probably again next week. It was a different time. It was a different time, right? So you can get lost. I think women especially can get lost in some of these instructions, and we forget that we're not supposed to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That I don't want you to get the impression that this is a cop-out, more a sense of what is contextual or cultural realities of the day. It was a different time. It was a hyper-patriarchal society, of which men were dominant and men ruled, and women were more possessions than actual people, if you will. So what I think we have to keep in mind when we read a book like Titus is these are two guys talking, an old guy and a young guy. It's Paul talking to Titus. These are two guys living inside a real contextual world and trying to give the best advice they can. So I think part of what is happening, Paul is promoting healthy relationships, particularly to the moment in the day, to that specific time, right? So he's trying to give advice from old to young, young to old, from men to women, from husbands to wives and wives to husbands, right? How do we relate? But how do they relate culturally in that day? So what's the takeaway for us 2,000 years later is maybe the question that you're asking. So part of what I want to share here is the word that strikes me in this entire passage is encourage. Encourage, right? So we are to be an encourager to one another. This is norm for the Christian life. It's who Barnabas was. It's who we're to be known for as encouragers. I think if I have one particular gift that I'm semi-good at, it is that I have the spirit of encouragement. I encourage our staff members. I've encouraged Ryan. I have encouraged Eric. I have encouraged you, hopefully. I'd like to believe that I am one of those positive reinforcers. And so essentially what somebody's coming along and saying is, listen, you younger people, take some advice from the older generation and be an encourager. But that means you have to model it. That means you have to demonstrate it. It means you have to share it. It means you have to mold and shape this next generation of people. Part of the emphasis that you're going to hear about in the coming weeks at Georgianna is the whole concept of next gen living. How are we pumping into and promoting the next generation of Christ followers? Because really that's our job, whether we're old like I am or you're young like Jen was. We are to have a job of looking to the generation behind us and how are we supporting them. So the advice here, if you get caught in the weeds, will seem like just misplaced advice for a time that is past. But I think the 30,000 foot view is to say, okay, how is it that they were speaking encouragement into one another in a way that created health and good relationships and Christian relationships, where Christ is the center of all things, right? We're reminded of Paul's word in Ephesians chapter 5, where he reminds us that we are to submit to one another as we submit to Christ, right? So that's the overarching rule. And then under it is all these parameters for having to live daily with one another. But again, think about the advice that they give. In general, it is helpful. It is helpful. So again, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but see what is trying to be taught here, right? That, listen, we want to be investing in the next generation, right? And some of us older folks like me can still learn some things from some younger folks like Jen, right? I'm learning things from my younger staff all the time, right? So it's not just a one-way street. It's a two-way highway that is intended to be just running smooth back and forth as we share life together. So I hope this is a great start to the new year for you. I hope it blesses you. And we look forward to seeing you again next week with what I think will be part 2 of It's a Different Time. I love you, church. Take care.